Ah, thanks, Spider-Man.
Everybody gets one.
Well, ladies and gents, Spider-Man Brand New Day is officially here. And so, as we enter the final stretch of the summer blockbuster season, the industry's favorite brain-dead question reemerges. Is cinema saved? 100% no. So welcome. I'm genuinely glad you're here. My name is Sean. And on the subject of Marvel, some time ago I was actually part of the Marvel family. Daredevil Season 2, Luke Cage Season 1 and Season 2, Jessica Jones Season 2, Iron Fist Season 1 and Season 2, The Punisher Season 1, and The Defenders. Way back before Kevin Feige turned the entire MCU into a sanitized, homogenized content factory. Way back before every leading man was neutered and emasculated.
Morning.
Way back when things were a lot simpler and a hell of a lot more honest.
I am Iron Man.
Look, I care about this industry, and I know you do too, which is why I refuse to feed you the corporate propaganda. Because we all know how this pathetic circus goes. A massive studio tentpole breaks an opening weekend box office record, a few corporate parasites congratulate each other in Burbank with reach-arounds.
Sir, I bet you're the kind of guy that would fuck a person in the ass and not even have the goddamn common courtesy to give him a reach around.
Film journalists on X erupt in synchronized, sycophantic circle jerks, and worst of all, the insufferable, smug, self-appointed indie grifters on LinkedIn shouting from the basements of their moms' houses between DoorDash shifts will declare with absolute, unearned confidence, yes, cinema is back, baby. I've been drowning in this garbage all year. Every single time a major title gets a shred of hype, whether it's an internet native play like Iron Lung and Obsession, or a studio hyped project like Project Hail Mary or The Odyssey, the entire industry collective gasps for air and pretends the system is healed.
You serious?
Whether it's a digital creator passion project breaking through, a 3-hour historical auteur epic, or in this moment, the latest installment of a multi-studio, multi-billion-dollar superhero franchise crawling its way out of creative lethargy.
Shut the fuck up. Stop being a fucking cunt.
The corporate spin doctrine is always identical. The box office is thriving. Audiences are returning. The theatrical ecosystem is saved. And so if you've made it this far with me, you already know it's a total lie. Or at least, I hope you come to understand why it's a lie. It is a comfortable, highly profitable delusion designed to placate corporate shareholders, inflate stock prices, and keep trade publications in ad revenue. By celebrating the gross box office of a $225 million studio tentpole with the structural health of the film business is like looking at a booming stock market and declaring poverty has been solved.
That doesn't make sense.
A single studio giant taking upwards of $380 million globally in its opening weekend does not float the ecosystem. It swallows it whole. It monopolizes 80% of the screens at your local multiplex. It squats on every IMAX and Dolby presentation box in the country. It consumes 90% of digital advertising inventory and sucks every last drop of cultural oxygen out of the room. So before I go further, understand this is not a review. This is not an attack on your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I saw the movie and I thought it was alright. I'm not here to critique the questionable and sloppy CGI. I'm not here to argue about comic book lore, which I am happy to admit I don't know or read. I am not here to attack how they once again took another iconic but complex female hero with a dark edge and softened her into a tragic victim whose catastrophic downfall is blamed entirely on, you guessed it, I'm not here to attack Tom Holland or the thousands of talented crew members doing their jobs, but I did get this popcorn bucket. All that aside, this is a dissection of a systemic lie and an explanation of why the market is failing at the independent level, why cinema is fundamentally not saved, and why the old model of raising money for original films is squashed like a bug. To understand why cinema isn't saved and why the system is broken, you have to look at what Brand New Day actually represents on an industrial level. Consider the landscape right now in 2026. This is the start of Tom Holland's second trilogy. That means we are watching the fourth actor starring in his second dedicated trilogy across the fourth distinct cinematic reboot of the exact same comic book character in 50 years. Nicholas Hammond in the 1977 live-action TV series The Amazing Spider-Man. I never saw it, and I have no plans to.
Whoopsie daisy!
Tobey Maguire in 2002, and damn, those first two Sam Raimi movies are untouchable. For me, they will always be peak superhero storytelling, period. They had actual heart and genuine stakes and a director's personal touch that checked every box before checking every box was the norm.
Well, how about that?
Then Andrew Garfield in 2012 with credit where it's due. Garfield is a phenomenal actor who broke his back using raw talent and charisma to carry two fundamentally weak studio-tampered films on his shoulders. And finally, Tom Holland in 2017. His films have been enjoyable, but they are tied directly into a bloated cinematic universe that Marvel would soon find out was directionless. Yet, the machine persisted, and now, almost a decade later, we are rolling into the second half of that fourth iteration. Studios don't cycle through 4 reboots in 50 years, let alone 3 reboots in 25 years because of an overwhelming abundance of artistic inspiration. They do it because of corporate contract windows, character licensing rights, and the absolute financial necessity of risk mitigation. When Sony and Marvel greenlit a new Spider-Man movie, that tells us they are managing an asset portfolio. How do I know? Just look at the baseline economics then versus now. Back in 2002, Sam Raimi's original Spider-Man was considered a massive, terrifying financial gamble. The production budget was $139 million. Adjusted for inflation, that $139 million in 2002 equates to about $258 million today. So the production spending looks somewhat comparable to a modern-day tentpole, but the underlying economics were completely different. In 2002, a $139 million budgeted movie bought practical sets, groundbreaking physical rigging, high-risk creative directional control, and, most importantly, it was backed by a secondary market that acted as a massive financial parachute in what I actively collect today: physical home media. In 2003, studios like Fox, Universal, and Miramax could drop $150 million on a sprawling, brilliant, uncompromising naval war epic like Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. Even when it made $212 million worldwide at the theatrical box office, it still killed any idea of sequels and was considered a bomb, but that machine survived. I use this film specifically because it turned a profit by successfully transitioning from a theatrical deficit into a multi-decade long-tail revenue generator. DVD and even VHS sales were generating billions of dollars in pure, high-margin revenue. The film left theaters deep in the red due to high production and marketing costs, but it gradually achieved profitability through massive physical media sales, television syndication, and now digital streaming licensing. Back then, a film didn't need to break even at the theatrical box office on opening weekend because the ancillary home video market was practically guaranteed to bail it out. If you have followed my channel up until this point, then you would know I already spoke about what physical media and distribution and what followed in one of my previous videos titled "Distribution is the Name of the Game." So please check that out when you can. So now fast forward to today, Brand New Day has $225 million in production costs alone, with some tracking estimates citing up to $275 million.
Holy Santa Claus shit.
And yet, $225 million is just the entry fee. Add global print and advertising budget of at least $150 million as well as paying for global press junkets, takeover billboards in major cities, custom promotional partnerships, and digital ad campaigns across 6 continents. Suddenly, you are sitting on a total capital outlay of nearly $400 million before a single ticket is bought and sold. And because theater chains take roughly 50% of domestic ticket sales and up to 60 to 75% of international ticket sales, that movie needs to clear $550 million to $600 million worldwide just to hit its financial break-even point. And because physical home video is dead and streaming platforms operate on a flat licensing model or opaque internal metrics, that giant box office number is no longer just a bonus. It is the only way the studio can justify the capital burn. So, what does a system like that produce? It produces extreme institutional risk aversion, which means for you that you cannot afford creative friction. You cannot afford moral ambiguity. You cannot afford unconventional pacing. And you cannot afford divisive endings. So every line of dialogue, every character beat, and every sequence must be scrubbed, tested, and polished to ensure maximum 4-quadrant safety. It must appeal to a 7-year-old in Ohio, a 25-year-old in Berlin, and a 50-year-old in Seoul. That is why studio brand IP feels homogenized. It is not because the executives are evil. They really are, actually.
Good boy, Connor. Pull.
Or because the directors lack talent. A lot of them do. It is because when you carry $400 million in unhedged capital risk, corporate fiduciary duty demands absolute product conformity. So now you must be asking, but Sean, why does any of this matter? I'm just an independent filmmaker trying to raise money today and blah, 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 my ass. But it is a fair question. If you're a producer trying to raise in this market, you care because nobody is buying what you're selling. And if by chance you're an investor watching this, looking at these types of deals, you care because you are being asked to fund an underisked gamble under the guise of an asset class. For the last decade, the independent film scene has been infected by a dangerous delusion of its own. I call it the indie grift machine. If you happen to log on to LinkedIn right now, yes, that LinkedIn, the platform founded by Reid Hoffman, the very same Reid Hoffman who can be spotted here, on Epstein Island. Then you will find an endless sea of self-proclaimed visionary film financiers and executive producers posting long-form manifestos about slate funding, disruptive IP packages, and the bold future of cinema. Every single post will make you want to crawl into a dark room and hit yourself over the head with a baseball bat. The indie grift is the outdated romantic delusion that independent filmmaking still works the way it did in 1994 or 2012 or during the peak of the streaming bubble, clinging to a phantom trickle-down economy where studio mega success supposedly translates into audience appetite and investor capital for low-budget original films. Spoiler alert, doesn't. And the same story gets told to the next cycle of filmmakers. You write a script. Maybe you max out your credit cards or convince your friends and family to give you $2 or $3 million of pure cash risk. You shoot your movie in isolation. You submit it to 30 obscure festivals, paying thousands of dollars in submission fees. You pray that you get into Sundance, Toronto, or South by Southwest. And then at 2 o'clock in the morning after your premiere, a streamer or a legacy indie distributor steps in, starts a wild bidding war, and buys your film for $8 million, netting your investors a 300% return and launching your career.
You serious?
If you're pitching investors based on that model today, you're just another idiot in a line of 10 million other idiots trying to sell lottery tickets. The traditional indie pipeline is broken. The middle class of film distribution has been systematically gutted. During the peak of the streaming wars, platforms were buying everything in sight to fill their libraries and inflating indie acquisition prices to absurd levels. But that bubble popped. Streamers slashed their acquisition budgets. Legacy specialty labels were swallowed up by media conglomerates or shuttered entirely. And today, when the independent film goes to a festival without pre-existing distribution or massive star-driven packaging, the odds of securing an outright acquisition deal that covers the production budget are astronomically low. Most films end their run with penniless platform distribution offers and agreements where a distributor takes the rights, charges you for their internal overhead, places the film behind an SVOD paywall or buried in an AVOD catalog, and passes zero meaningful cash back to the equity holders. Yet, despite this reality, independent filmmakers continue to build their pitches using the exact same playbook from 15 years ago. Pitch original unpackaged scripts for $3, $5, or $7 million with zero pre-sales, zero tax incentive leverage, zero built-in audience strategy, and a recoupment waterfall that puts equity investors dead last.
Not a great plan.
And the absolute irony of what I just said is the old playbook that is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of what the market actually gives a about today. That is the grip. Not because filmmakers are malicious, but because they are operating on nostalgia instead of financial literacy. They are asking private equity to take 99% of the risk for a product with zero market positioning, while blinding themselves with nonsense that their original film will be the 1 in a million breakout that saves cinema.
Jesus Christ, great.
So now, what is the point of all this? Well, the disappearance of the secondary market removed the film business's tolerance for failure, and everything downstream of that is a consequence rather than a choice. Brand New Day works as my example because it's the most celebrated object in the market right now outside of The Odyssey. However, it's also the clearest evidence that the market is sick because it marks the moment where the film business completely decoupled from the technology industry's fundamental rule. You do not fund the product. You fund the network. Look at how sophisticated allocators actually deploy resources everywhere else. Silicon Valley doesn't drop $50 million building an app and then pray people download it. They build the distribution protocol first, lock in the user base, and treat the software as a downstream feature. Or they ad bomb you to death. The film industry is the only remaining legacy market where people still expect private capital to fund the manufacturing of a finished good before it even exists and before a single customer profile has been verified. That's why tech capital stopped backing indie film slates and started buying creator-owned platforms, newsletter networks, and digital communities instead. They realized that owning the pipe is infinitely more valuable than owning the water flowing through it.
That was genius, Lloyd. Sheer genius. I mean, where did you come up with a scam like that?
So if you're pitching a film today as a standalone product, you're trying to sell a single MP3 in a world that moved to Spotify 10 years ago. Until independent creators stop operating as transactional manufacturers and start structuring their offerings as de-risk alternative assets, they will remain outside modern financial markets. They are simply soliciting private equity to absorb the downside of an unhedged vanity project.
Not a great plan.
With all that being said, that does not mean original filmmaking is dead, and it certainly doesn't mean you can't get your movie made. It just means the job description has changed. So if cinema is not saved by studio blockbusters, and the traditional indie pipeline is a dead end, what is the path forward? How do you actually structure, pitch, and execute an independent race in this climate? For starters, you stop trying to play the studio's game, and at the same time, you stop relying on the old indie bullshit. You treat an independent film raise for what it actually needs to be today. A lean, agile, high-margin alternative asset launch. If you don't have any idea what that means, then pitching capital sources in a family office or a high-net-worth individual or a private equity group on a great story with zero risk mitigation instantly kills your credibility before you even wipe your ass today.
But I want my own ass! I want my own ass!
I know.
You are just asking them to write off a capital expenditure, and again, that pitch represents the old model.
You have no idea how bad it gets.
It relies on a distribution landscape that no longer exists by offering maximum risk exposure for zero guaranteed market positioning. So, here is the solution. A raise gets funded when it satisfies three conditions and stalls when it fails any one of them. Cost, terms, return. None of the three belongs to film. A founder raising a seed round in 2026 runs straight into the same sequence, but they just misprice it with different terminology. For cost, a studio picture carries an overhead allocation, a revenue share off the top, and senior debt service, all of its service before any LP distribution applies. A direct raise does get you out from under fee friction that was never negotiable in the first place. What gets left out is where the capital friction goes, which is onto your net runway. Bridge loans priced at venture debt rates an institution would never accept. The placement agent takes an origination fee, the escrow agent takes a maintenance fee, the legal and compliance team takes 2 to 3% of the raise, and institutional counsel takes what counsel takes. Sometimes that net cost of capital lands worse than the dilution you walked away from. Most seed budgets are shaped like growth stage budgets, padded in the same operating expenses with no line anywhere accounting for the cost of capital itself. The investor reading it can strip down your model faster than you can defend it, and what follows is not a reaction to your product. For terms, liquidation waterfalls in this asset class were written so that common equity almost never sees a payout. That is why the phrase preferred return exists, and why founders are still fighting over ratchets decades later. Founders learned to distrust legacy term sheets, then drafted syndicate docs carrying the same structural defect, pointed this time at their own angel syndicates, mostly without meaning to. It surfaces as an ambiguous payout order in the waterfall, a preferred return described in a deck, and omitted in the operating agreement, a safe or convertible note adapted from a template written for a business model that scales differently. An LP's counsel finds all three during basic due diligence. The warm introduction that got you in does not survive past that afternoon, and it was never yours to spend twice. And finally, for return, a handful of fund returners carry the entire asset class and most of the portfolio fails, which has been true for as long as power law distribution has been tracked. That was the shape when strategic buyers still had broad M&A budgets. The growth funds and acquirers buying early stage companies in 2021 are buying fewer of them in 2026 and paying lower multiples for what they take. So the yield profile did not improve. The exit just got harder. This is also where the equity upside promise falls apart. Anyone extending venture debt or credit facilities takes a first priority security interest in your assets. So you hold the equity while every commercial use of your IP sits encumbered until the senior debt is retired. A raise telling APs they retain unencumbered ownership is announcing it has not closed a debt layer before. A single licensing deal with no terminal value strategy, derivative rights signed away is an IP clause nobody read slowly, and secondary value that belongs to a debt holder by the time anyone goes looking for it. So the part that makes it hard is that failing one condition is ordinary and correctable on its own. But the difficulty is that all three move together. Lowering what your raise costs changes which terms you are able to hold. The terms you sign decide which revenue paths stay open to you. Closing one of those paths changes what the project can afford to cost in the first place. Anyone working through them one at a time in the order they happen to discover them is unwinding the first two by the time they reach the third. So now, here are the lessons. Henning Toro, Houston, and Height Jans in the Journal of Marketing in 2009 priced sequel rights as a financial asset using all 101 initial sequels released in North America between 1998 and 2006, matched against originals carrying the same budgets, the same theater counts, and the same ratings and the same star power. $57 million against $53 million. 2,618 opening screens against 2,492 screens. Sequels returned $175 million. The originals returned $138.2 million. Now, the revenue gap itself isn't the finding because the true finding lies in the standard error. 67.17 for the sequels and 95.90 for the originals, meaning the sequels carried a drastically narrower range of financial uncertainty. Ironically, they then priced Spider-Man specifically to prove what that predictability is worth. A buyer indifferent to risk valued the sequel right at $52.67 million. A buyer demanding 90% certainty valued the identical right at $70.64 million. Same film, same revenue, more money, because what got narrow was the range of what it might earn. Today, physical media is gone, destroying the old DVD backend safety net, which means every buyer in 2026 has become that 90% certainty buyer. Cooper, Wu, and Dunkelberg in the Journal of Business Venturing in 1988 published that 2,994 people who had just opened their own businesses were asked 2 questions on the same form. The first question was, what are your odds of success? And the second question is, what are the odds for other businesses like yours? For themselves, the mean answer was 8.1 out of 10. 81% put their own odds at 7 out of 10 or better. 33% said 10 out of 10. For businesses exactly like theirs, the same people answered 5.9. The researchers went in expecting the well-prepared owners to be confident ones, which would at least make the confidence worth reading. It did not hold. Preparation had no relationship to confidence at all. The owners with nothing behind them were as certain as the owners with everything behind them. This reveals the fundamental clash between how creators pitch and how investors evaluate risk. The 8.1 is your deck. The 5.9 is the number the person reading it already ran on you before you sat down, because running the 5.9 is their job. It's my job. The fatal error is assuming that an unpriced title only afflicts amateurs when in practice a finished script and a real festival record are the ultimate cloaking device for a project nobody can forecast. Understanding why originals carry no forecast prevents the bleed, but identifying where your specific project is actively unpriceable requires an independent diagnostic framework. Both filmmakers and founders mistake creative validation at laurels, coverage scores, manager, or soft attachment for a track record. In true risk assessment of an independent raise, an audience nobody has ever counted is a liability, not an asset. Only a forecast somebody outside your project has tested functions as an asset. Your own deck merely reflects your own 8.1 out of 10, meaning you are inherently blind to your own foundational vulnerabilities. You assume you're pitching something real and one of a kind, but you are completely blind to the undefined error term, the payout order that seats your equity dead last, and the fact that every projection in that document was reverse engineered from the result you already decided you were getting.
That doesn't make sense.
A risk-adjusted project profile is an independent revenue forecast with a stated confidence interval and pre-close review of every claim your offering makes. It is a clinical, institutional audit of how far the downside case runs before your equity is worth nothing, and what you already committed to in writing without knowing it. It removes the emotion and exposes the exact stress points that will cause an LP to pass or an investor to face immediate insolvency, because no studio or distributor is legally required to score your title with a built-in safety margin. That is the work at Wrap Consulting. What is your risk-adjusted project profile? Everything you have been sold about this process was built to keep you chasing validation, access, and hope. It was never built to tell you the truth. So return that shit to its sender.
Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
If you have found value in this breakdown, thank you for your time. Please hit like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If it wasn't for you, I appreciate you sticking around anyway. I will see you next time.